Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to learn how to create Stripe subscriptions with Node.js using Stripe checkout, and we're also going to monitor our subscriptions using webhooks. You can find the Stripe complete API documentation by visiting docs.stripe.com/API. And for this video we're going to build a simple page containing two subscription plans, and when the customer clicks in one of the plans to subscribe, it will redirect the customer to the Stripe checkout page where the customer can enter the payment details. If everything is okay, the customer will be redirected to a simple success page informing that the subscription had started. And later we'll create a route to redirect the customers to a Stripe customer portal where they can directly manage their existing subscriptions by changing the payment details or canceling the subscription plan. In the last part of the video, we're going to provision and monitor our subscriptions by using webhooks with Stripe CLI. That way, our application will be notified every time something happens on Stripe. Like when a new customer subscribes, when a new payment is being made, when a subscription is canceled, and many other events. So before we get our hands on coding, first thing you need to do is to create a Stripe account if you don't have one yet, by visiting the Stripe official website, which is stripe.com. And you can click on the sign in button on the top right. And on the login page, you can click on create account link on the bottom. And on the registration page, it will ask to enter a few details, and once you're done, you can click on create account button. Since I already have an account, I'll click on sign in. And I'm just gonna log with one of my personal accounts here. Okay, click on sign in. Okay, so this is the Stripe dashboard page. As you can see here on the top left, we're on test mode. That means that all subscriptions and payments we received, it will be fake. Just so we can test and make sure everything is working before going to production. We can change to production mode by toggling this test mode option here on the top right. So let's check a few things here. First, here on this drop down on the top, it shows our business accounts. As you can see, Stripe already created one by default for us called New Business. But we can easily change the name by clicking on Edit. And on the company field, I'm just going to put manfra.io and click on Save. Okay, so our account name is changed to manfra.io, and we can create other accounts by clicking on Create New Account here. So to create our subscription plans, we need to create a product for each plan here on the Stripe dashboard. To do so, you can click on More option here on the left and select the product catalog here under Manage Your Products. Okay, and on the product catalogs page, as you can see, we don't have any products yet. So let's create our first product or plan by clicking on Add Product button here on the top. And it will open this dialog where we can inform the plan details. So let's create two plans only, the starter and the pro plans. Of course, you can create more, but for our example, two is fine. So the name of this first plan will be starter. And for the description, we can enter something like this is the starter plan, for example. And we can upload an image here if you want, but I'll leave without an image. We can inform more options by expanding this, but we're not going to use this option here. For example, on the metadata field, we can add key value pairs informing anything we want for our own control. But like I said before, we don't need this. Now here we can select if it's a recurring product, that means it will be charged every period of time, or the one-off option, which is a one-time payment. Since this is a subscription, that means it will be charged every period of time. So we can leave as recurring here. And the amount for the starter plan, let's add $20. Last is the billing period, which is the period that this plan will charge the customer. So there's a few options here, but we can customize according to our needs by selecting custom option. And here we can select something like every 2 months or every 10 days, for example. So we can set our own schedule here. But for our example, let's put what usually is the standard for most of the subscriptions out there, which is monthly. Okay, we can click on Add Product. And here it is, our first subscription plan, which is a starter, charging $20 every month. So let's create another plan by clicking again on Add Product. And the name of this plan will be Pro. And for the description, I'll add this is the Pro plan. Not gonna upload an image as well. This is also recurring and will charge $40 every month as well. Okay, we can click on Add Product. And perfect. Here's the Pro plan charging $40 every month. Great, so our subscription plans are created. We can also create these products or plans from inside our application by calling the Stripe Products and Prices API directly, where you can find on the Stripe API documentation. So on the left side here, if you scroll down a little, you can find the API endpoints under the Products option. So here are the endpoints to create, read, update, and delete products. And you also have to create a price for the product by calling different endpoints under the Price option here and relate the product to a price. Products define what your business offers, if it's a goods or a service, and prices define how much and how often to charge the product. If it's just one time or every month, for example. Since we created our products directly from inside the Stripe dashboard here, Stripe automatically creates a product and a price and relay them. So keep in mind, if you're going to create products directly from your application, you will also have to create a price for each product as well. Now, to connect our Node.js application with Stripe, we'll need an API secret key that it must be securely stored inside our application. This is like a password that Stripe will use to identify and to authorize our application. We can view this API secret key by clicking on the Developers option here on the top and select the API Keys tab. So we have two different keys, which is the publishable key, and this is only used on the front end to generate tokens. We're not going to use this publishable key on this project. And we also have the secret key, which is meant to be used only on the back end, and this is the one that we're going to use. You can click on Review Test Key to copy this key here, and make sure to generate your own key for your own project, because after this video, I'll be deleting this one. So we'll be back later on this page to copy this secret key and paste securely inside our project. So everything here on the dashboard is configured for now, our account name, our subscription plans, and we can get started on coding. I'll be using VS Code for the tutorial, but feel free to use any other code editor you like. I have an empty folder open here on VS Code called Stripe Subscriptions with Node.js. And let's start by creating our Node application by opening the terminal here on the top and type npm init and -y flag to populate all the options with the default npm init values. Okay, project created. Let me just refresh here. So we have a new package JSON file which stores information of our application, and all this data here is editable. Next, let's install the dependencies we'll be using. So back on the terminal, let me clear and type npm install, and we're gonna use Express to organize our routes, and the Stripe official module, EJS for the template engine, and .env to store the Stripe keys and other environment variables. Okay, dependencies installed. Let me close the package JSON file, refresh here again, and we can see here inside our package JSON file, under the dependencies object, the dependencies we just installed. Great. Still inside the package JSON file, we have this main property here, pointing to a file called index.js, which is going to be the main file of our application. So let's create this file in the root. So new file, index.js. And inside this file, I'm just gonna paste some lines of code here because in every video in the channel, I just keep repeating myself when creating a basic Express server. Okay, so here on the top, we are initializing the .env module to use our environment variables. So we need to create a .env file also on the root. We'll create soon. And here we are importing Express and then initializing Express inside a constant call app. Next, we're setting the EJS template engine inside Express. Next, we're creating a basic route, which is like a home route that when we access, it renders the index.ejs file that we're also going to create soon. And last, we're telling Express to listen on port 3000, and if everything works, we should see the message server started on port 3000 when running the server. So before we test all this, we need to create our .env file to store the environment variables we're going to use, and also the index.ejs file that we're rendering here on the home route. So let's start with the .env file. So here on the root, new file, and we'll call this .env. So inside this file, we should store the secret keys, usually from external services and other variables that's going to be unique for each environment like development, production, or other environments. So let's store our Stripe secret key inside here, back on the browser. Let's click on the developers option on the top and select the API keys tab. Let's review the secret key, which is the one that we need. And you can click on top of it to copy the content. Great, back on VS Code. I'll create a new environment variable here called Stripe _secret _key. Usually I like to create these variables all in capital, but this is just a personal choice. And this will be equals to the Stripe key that we just copied. Great. Now let's create the index.ejs file we're rendering here. So Express by default sets the template files in a directory called views. We can change that if we want, but let's maintain like that. So we need to create a views folder inside the root. So new folder called views. And inside, let's create a new file called index.ejs. And the EJS template file works just like a normal HTML file, but we can actually print variables, use loops, and many other functionalities. So if you're using VS Code, you can type HTML inside here, and you can select this HTML:5 option, and VS Code will automatically create a basic HTML structure for us. Let me just change the title here to Stripe Subscriptions with Node.js. So we're just going to create a very simple template. We're not going to use any styles, any CSS here, because the main focus is Stripe. So I'll just create an h1 tag here, and inside I'll put plans. Next, I'll create an h2 tag that will show the name of the plan. So let me open the Stripe dashboard here and select the products catalog shortcut here. And let me click on the starter plan here to see more details. And the starter plan is $20 every month. So back on VS Code, I'll add starter here inside the h2. And I'll add a paragraph to show the price. So $20. And I'll add a slash here to show the interval. In our case is month. Okay, let me just add a B tag to highlight these fields. Okay, cut from here and paste inside the B tag. Great. Next, I'll create another paragraph to show the description. So back on the browser, the description is here on the right. Let me copy from here and paste inside the paragraph. Great. Last, let's add a link tag, and the href will point to a route that we're going to create soon, which is /subscribe. And I'll add a question mark here because we're going to insert a query parameter called plan equals to starter, which is the name of the plan, all in lowercase. So we're going to create this route soon on the index.js file, and we're going to check which plan the customer had subscribed by reading this plan query parameter here. In the link content, I'll add subscribe. Great. Now I'll copy this entire code we have here and paste below here. And this will be the pro plan, so the h2 tag is pro. And let me check the pro plan details here on the dashboard. So back on products, and let's open the pro plan. Okay, so the price is 40, also month interval, so $40 here. And the description is, this is the pro plan. And for the link href, let me change the plan query parameter here to pro, all in lowercase. So this type of parameter here, we can call URL slug, which is the part of the URL that identifies a particular page on a website in an easy to read form. Okay, now to separate these two plans here, I'll add 3 BR tags to add some extra space here. Awesome. So now we can test by running the index.js file. So back on the terminal, I'll clear, And we can type node index.js or just index and hit enter. Great, here's the message, server started on port 3000. Now let's test the home route that we have here. So back on the browser, I'll open a new tab and type localhost, column 3000. Awesome, here are both plans that we created, the starter and the pro. We could retrieve these plans directly from Stripe dashboard calling their products API, or we could save all this information inside our own database and fetch it from there. But for our example, we can just create static like this. And if we click on the subscribe link, it shows an error, of course, because we haven't created the /subscribe route yet. Back on VS Code, so every time we change something in our project, we have to save, stop the server by pressing Ctrl+C, and run again node index command. I'll be using a module called nodemon, which will monitor our project every time we save a file. It will restart the server automatically for us. So let me clear the terminal and type npm install nodemon. And this is going to be a developer dependencies, so I'll add a flag here that can be --save -dev or -D. And hit enter. Okay, nodemon is installed, and if we check here inside the package JSON file, you can see under the dev dependencies, nodemon module is installed. That means that when we publish this project to a production server, only the dependencies will be installed and not the dev dependencies. These are only used during development. Now to run nodemon, there's a property here called script. Let me get rid of this test script here because we're not going to use it. And let's add a new one called start. And instead of running node index command, we'll now use just nodemon. Great, now back on the terminal, let's run the new start command by typing npm and the name of the script, which is start. Hit enter, and now nodemon will monitor our application and restart the server whenever we save a file. As you can see, we got the server started on port 3000 message, and we can even close the terminal for now. Now we need to create the subscribe route when the customer clicks in one of the subscribe plans link, which will redirect the customer to the subscribe question mark and the plan name. Of course, this parameter name is up to you and also the value. This is just to identify which plan the customer is subscribing to. So back on the index.js file, let's create this new route below the home route. So I'll call app dot, and this will be a get route. And the name of this route is /subscribe. And this is also a synchronous route with the request and response parameters, arrow function. And inside, so the first thing we need to do is to get the product price by the plan parameter that we have on the URL. So here on the Stripe dashboard, on the products catalog, let's open one of the products here. So on the right side, you can see the product ID, which is this product underscore and a random string. This is like a primary key that Stripe created automatically for the product. But when we'll create a subscription, we're gonna need to pass the price ID related to this product. And that we can get it by clicking on the price details here. And on the price page, you can find the price ID here on the top right. So this is the ID that we'll need when creating a checkout session. I'll explain later what is a Stripe checkout session. So if you have your own database with a products or a plans table, make sure to store both these IDs, the product ID and the price ID on this table as well. Now back on the code, let's continue with the get subscribe route. So when a customer is subscribing to a plan, we need to create a Stripe checkout session. A Stripe checkout session is a pre-built payment form that allows business to securely accept payments. If you're not familiar with Stripe checkout sessions, there's a video here on the channel where I explain in depth how to create checkout sessions and how to customize different types of payment according to your needs. I'll leave the video link on the description below. So let's create a checkout session here using the Stripe module. So we need to import the Stripe module here on the top. So const Stripe equals to require Stripe. And to initialize Stripe, we have to add parentheses here. And inside, we need to add our secret key that we added here on the .m file. So let me copy from here. And to get the content from the environment variables, we need to add process.env and paste the name of the variable here. Perfect. Now back on the subscribe route, I'll create a new const called session equals to await the Stripe module we just imported, dot checkout, dot sessions, dot create method. And inside we can configure some properties inside an object. So the first property we need to configure is the mode property, and this is equals to subscription because it's going to be recurring payments. And next we need to configure the line underscore items property, which is equals to an array. And we can configure the products that the customer is purchasing, like the name of the product, description, the price, the quantity. But since we already created these products on the Stripe dashboard, we can simply pass the price ID here. Remember, here on the product details, let me go back here, we have the product ID and a price object for each product. So this is the ID that we need to pass on the line items, which is the price ID and not the product ID. So inside the route, before creating the session, we need to check if the customer is subscribing to the starter plan or to the pro plan. So I'll create a new const here called plan, which is equals to the request parameter here on the route, dot query, dot the name of the parameter, which is plan. Now let's add a validation here, checking if the plan is not null or undefined. So if plan, and I'll add an exclamation sign here on the beginning. So if the plan parameter is not there, let's just return a simple message to the customer. So return response.send, and inside I'll just add something like subscription, plan not found. Okay, now if the plan parameter is there, we can add a switch statement here and check if the plan constant, and we can add here dot to lowercase. So if we send the plan all with uppercase, this will convert all to lowercase. And inside the statement, we can add a case clause here to check if the plan is equals to starter. And if it is, we need to store the starter plan price ID inside a variable. So I'll create here before the switch statement a new variable using let called price ID. Back on the switch statement. So if the plan is a starter, then the price ID is equals to, let's get the price ID here on the Stripe dashboard. The starter plan price details is already opened. So we can copy the price ID here on the top right just by clicking on top and paste inside here. Now on the next line, we can add a break statement to end the switch execution. And let's add another case clause here. And this time we'll check if the plan is equals to pro. And if it is, the price ID will be equals to, let's go back to the Stripe dashboard and open the product catalog, select the pro plan, open the price details and copy the price ID and paste inside here. And the break statement again. Great. And let's add a default clause on the end. So if it's not the starter or pro plan, we can actually return the same message from up here. So let me copy and paste down here. Great. And we don't need to add the break statement here for the default. Now back on the line items array of the checkout session, we can configure inside an object the price property, which is equals to the price ID we're handling here on the switch statement. And also we need to set the quantity property as well. And in this case, it will be 1. Great. Now out of the line items array, we can configure a property called success underscore URL, which is the route that Stripe will redirect the customers when a payment is complete. So we can add here our base URL, which is http://localhost port 3000/success, for example. And we can configure a parameter here by adding a question mark, which is the session underscore ID equals to an object. And inside we can add a template variable called checkout underscore session underscore ID. So Stripe will automatically add the session ID here so we can retrieve the details about the session. Note that this is a literal string and must be added exactly like this. Okay, we can also add a cancel underscore URL property. This will display a back button on the checkout payment page that will redirect the customers to the route we configure here. So let's add our base URL here. And we can call this /cancel, for example. Great, that's all for the checkout session. Let's just print the session constant on the console so we can see the result. So console.log the session constant. Okay, so let's test this. Back on the browser, I'll open our projects tab here. Let me remove the /subscribe here so we can access the home route. And let's click on the starter plan subscribe link. And since we didn't send a response back, the browser will just keep loading till it gets a timeout error. Now back on VS Code, let me open the terminal. And let me just expand here. And here are the session details that we just created. As you can see, there are a lot of details here. But what we'll need is the URL property here on the bottom. We need to redirect the customer to this URL. So let me open this URL by holding Ctrl and click. It will show this dialog here. We can click on open. And it will automatically open the browser redirecting to the link we just clicked. Great, this is the Stripe checkout page. Here on the top left, it shows the name of our business and it says that we're in test mode. And here it shows details of the plan that the customer is subscribing. In this case, the starter plan with an amount of $20 per month. And here's the subscription that we added. And on the right side, we have the payment methods. So we can add more payment methods here or remove everything and leave just the card method. Okay, so the session we created is working. Now we just need to redirect the customer to this URL here. So let me remove this console log from here and call the response parameter dot redirect, and inside the session constant dot URL. Okay, let me close the terminal for now. And before we test again, let's remove this pay with link button and leave just the card method. So let me close this tab here, and on our subscribe route, if we refresh, it shows the checkout page. Great, so let's open the Stripe dashboard, and we can click on the settings button here on the top and select settings. And on the settings page, we can open the payments option here on the bottom and select the payment methods tab. So here, as you can see, the card payment method is active. So we can leave as it is. And if we scroll down, it will show all payment methods here. So the Apple Pay here, we can disable by clicking on it and click on turn off button. Okay, now let's do this for all active methods. The Cash App Pay. Okay, the link. Sometimes it will show this dialog here, just informing the benefits of leaving this payment method active. But for our example, we can turn it off. Okay, so all payment methods are disabled for the checkout page and just the card is active. Great. We can also customize the colors of the checkout page. For example, we can open the settings again and click on business. Then we can expand the more option here and select branding. On the branding page, make sure the checkout and payment links are selected. And we can click on the customize button here. So we can view in a smaller screen simulating a smartphone, or we can view on a bigger screen like a laptop. And on the left here, we can change the background color of the left side of the checkout page by opening the color picker and select the color. As you can see, it changes the preview on real time. Or we can add directly here the X color code. So I'll add a blue color, which is 4191E1. Okay, looks good. And we can also change the subscribe button color. So I'll just copy the same color from the background and paste here. Great. We can also change the font of the page. So let me select here. Okay, but I'll just leave the default one. And also the shape of the input fields and the subscribe button. Okay, I'll just leave the rounded shape. Once we're done customizing the checkout page, we can click on the Save Changes button here on the bottom. And great. Now sometimes the fields here on the left might be disabled if you're running on test mode. So if that happens, you can toggle the test mode option here to live mode, and then it will enable all fields so you can change the styles. Once you save the changes, you can toggle back to test mode and the styles will remain saved. Okay, so let's test all this again. Back on our project page here, let me open the home route again and click on the starter plan subscribe link. And awesome. It shows the background with the blue color we selected and just the card payment method here on the right. So before informing the card details and start the subscription, let's create these two routes here that we configure inside the checkout session we created. But first, let's save this base URL here inside our .env file. So let's create a new environment variable called base_URL, which is equals to the HTTP column / localhost and port 3000. Now back on the index.js, let's add backticks here on the success URL property instead, and replace the beginning here with a $, curly braces, and inside process.env and the base_URL variable we just created. Great, and the same here for the cancel URL property, so backticks, $, curly braces, process.env.base_URL. Great, so now we have a better environment configuration. Now let's create both the success and cancel routes below here. So app.get, and this is the /success, the request and response parameters, arrow function, and inside let's just show on the console the session details that we can retrieve using the session ID parameter. So I'll create a new const called session equals to await. So we need to add the async here before the route function, and here we can call the Stripe module .checkout.sessions.retrieve. And inside the checkout session ID from the URL parameter here, where we can get it from the request parameter .query.session_ID. Same name from here. Now let's print this on the console, so console.log the session constant. And let's just return a success response to the client, so res.send, and we can put something like subscribed successfully. Awesome. Now let's create the cancel route below here. So app.get, and the name is /cancel, the request and response parameters, arrow function, and inside what we can do is just redirect the customer back to the home route we created here on the top. So response.redirect, and I'll just add a / here. We could call the home route directly inside the cancel URL property here, like this. But you might want to do something if for some reason the customer decided to cancel, like store the information and have a history log, so later you can get in touch with the customer. So I'll just leave a separate route for the cancel URL. Okay, let's save all this and test again. So back on the browser, let me open the home route again. Okay, I'll click on the starter plan subscribe link once again. Great. Now before subscribing, let's just click on the back button here next to our business name. As you can see here on the bottom, it's pointing to the /cancel route. And great, we got redirected to the cancel route and then redirected again to the home route. So the cancel URL property is working. Let me click again on the starter plan subscribe. Okay, so now I'll inform the card details. So for the email, I'll just add a random email here. So john.doe@domain.com. And for the card number, so if we inform 4242 for all digits here, Stripe will handle this as a success payment. And we can add any date here as long as it's greater than the current date. So I'll add January for the month and 25 for the year. And we can add any number for the CVC. So I'll add 123. The cardholder name, I'll add John Doe. And the country, since I'm in Brazil, it will just show the current country as default. But we can change this, so I'll choose United States instead. This will show a new zip code field. I'll just add 92000 for example. And we can configure on the checkout session to only show the countries we want here. Okay, we can click on subscribe. Okay, processing. And great, we are redirect to the /success route with the session ID parameter here and the message subscribed successfully. And if we check on the terminal, since we are retrieving the session by the session ID parameter, we have here on the console the complete session details, like the customer details, the amount here on the top, and this here is showing on cents. That's how Stripe works. But it's not showing the card information or even the plan that the customer subscribed. So everything that has an ID here, so for example, this subscription here is an ID, the invoice here is an ID, the customer is also an ID. So all these IDs, we can expand the information, and instead of showing just the ID, it will show the complete object details related to that ID. So for example, let's expand this subscription property here since it's an ID. So here on the checkout sessions retrieve method, we can add an extra parameter, which is an object, and we can configure the expand property. This is equals to an array with all the properties we want to expand the information. So let me copy the property name here. And inside single or double quotes, let's paste here inside the array. Great, and let's test this to see the result on the console. But since it's going to return more objects here, we'll need to convert this to string. So I'll wrap this with a JSON.stringify and the session constant inside. Great, let's test now. Back on the browser. Let me remove this /success from here to open the home route again. And this time I'll click on the Pro Subscribe link. Okay, so for the email here, I'll put another email. So jane.smith@domain.com, for example. And for the card number, we can also add 5 for the first digits here and 4 for the 4 last digits, which Stripe will also handle as a success payment. And for the date, I'll also add January 25 and 123 for the CVC. The cardholder name, I'll add Jane Smith. And the country, I'll just leave as Brazil. Now click on subscribe. Okay, we got redirect to the success route. And here on the terminal, we got this huge object string here, which is the session details. Let me copy the entire object. Okay, now here on the top tabs, right click and select new text file. Let me just reduce the terminal here and I'll paste the entire object here. Now right click inside and I'll select format document, and there it is. Now if we check the subscription property up here, we have this huge object with all the subscription details, and as you can see there are a lot of details here that we can use, but note that we still didn't receive the product details, just the product property, which is an ID. So we need to expand one of these properties again. But we cannot expand more than 4 levels of a property. So for example, we cannot expand this product here because it's inside the subscription, 1 level, then items, 2 levels, data, 3 levels, and the plan, 4 levels, and the product, which total is 5 levels. So if we try to expand this property, Stripe will return an error. So we have to look for some other properties here that contains the product ID. For example, this plan property that also have the product ID here. So back on the index.js file, inside the expand property, we could add subscription.plan.product. That this will return the complete product object details. I'll leave like this so we can test again later. And if you have your own database, you might want to create a customer table to save the customer information, and also a subscription table to save the subscriptions and relate them to the customer. Make sure to save the Stripe ID as well inside these tables. Let me close this tab here. Okay, now let's go back to the Stripe dashboard. And if we click here on the payments option on the left side menu, so we received 2 payments from both subscriptions, the starter plan in the amount of $20 and also the pro plan in the amount of $40. And we can click to see more details here, like the payment method, the customer details, the subscription plan details. So every month the payments we'll receive from the subscriptions, it will show here. But to actually see the subscriptions, we can click on the more options here on the left and select subscriptions. And here are the 2 subscriptions that we have. Both of them are active, one for the starter plan and the other one for the pro plan. And we can see the customer email here as well. Awesome. So our Stripe subscription workflow is working. Now we need to enable a way for the customer to view their subscription details, change their payment methods, view the invoice history, or maybe if they need to cancel the subscription. In Stripe, this is called a customer portal. And to enable this customer portal, we can open the settings here on the top and click on billing. Then select the customer portal tab. And all we need to do is just click on save changes, even if we don't change anything. The Save Changes button will enable the customer portal functionality. And as you can see here, this is the page layout that from inside our application will redirect the customer. So here on the right side, it shows the plan details that the customer is subscribed, the payment methods, where the customer can add or delete and select the default payment method. And then we have the billing information with the details of the customer. And last, we have the invoice history showing all payment subscription history. We can change some of these options here on the left. So for example, under the invoices option, we can disable the invoice history and it changes the layout here in real time. Let me enable back. And on the customer information, we can hide or show the details. So for example, if I unselect the name, you can see here on the layout that the name is not there anymore. Let me select back. So we have some options here that we can configure. And let me open the business information here. So we can customize this portal header input, which is this text here. So for example, I'll add welcome to your manfra.io subscription portal. And we can see the final result here. Okay, so let's click on Save Changes. Now that we configure the customer portal, we need to create a billing portal session from inside our project. So back on VS Code. So on your application, you must add some authentication functionality so a customer can only access its own portal. And we'll create a new route simulating that the customer is already logged into the application, maybe using a username and password, for example. So I'll create this new route here below the cancel route. So app.get, and we'll call this route /customers. And we need to send the Stripe customer ID here as a parameter. So I'll add / column, and we can call this parameter customer ID, for example. I'll show you later on the Stripe dashboard where you can get this customer ID so we can test. And we'll add async here, the request and response parameters, arrow function. And inside, like I said before, we need to create a session, but this time is for the billing portal. So I'll create a new const called portal session equals to await the Stripe module dot billing portal in camel case dot sessions dot create method. And we can configure some properties here inside an object. So the first property we need to configure is the customer, and this is equals to the customer ID that we can get it here from the route parameter. So I'll call the request parameter from the route dot params dot the customer ID parameter we added. And we can also configure a property called return underscore URL. And this is the route that the customers will be redirect when they click on the portal's link to return to our website. So I'll add here backticks And we can add the base URL that we saved on the .env file, so $, curly braces, and inside the process .env.base underscore URL. And let's just add a slash here, so the customer will be redirected to the home route. Feel free to configure another route here to handle whatever process you might need, but for our project, we can leave the home route here. Now let's just print on the console the portal session constant we created, so console.log, the portal session. So back on the browser, I'll open another tab here, and I'll add the localhost, column 3000, /customers, and we need to get a customer ID here to test. So on the Stripe dashboard, we can view all our customers by clicking on the customers option here on the left. So we have 2 customers. Let's open the John Doe here. And the customer ID is right here on the right. And we can click on top to copy. And let's paste on the URL here. Hit enter. And since we didn't send any response back, it will just keep loading here. And back on VS Code, let's open the terminal. Okay, scroll down. And here's the portal session details. And what we need to do is redirect the customer to this URL here. So back on the customers route, let me get rid of this console log here. And I'll call the response parameter dot redirect. And inside the portal session dot URL. Let's save and test again. Back on the browser. Okay, since we're sending a response back, redirecting the client to the portal URL, the browser already refreshed it here. There was no time to send the timeout error. So everything is working and the customer is redirected to the portal. Great. As you can see on the left, we have the header here saying welcome to your manfra.io subscription portal. And on the right, the subscribe plan details, the payment method, billing information, and the invoice history. So the customer can add another payment method here, and since there's only one payment method, so the customer can't delete this one. But this option will be enabled once the customer adds another payment method. And the customer can also cancel this plan subscription by clicking on the cancel plan, and then it will open a confirmation page. So if we click on cancel plan again, okay, it will show a dialog to send a feedback. We can select an option and click on submit, or just click on no thanks. Okay, now the subscription plan is canceled, but the customer can still access the portal if we need to renew the plan here. So now if we check on the Stripe dashboard and select subscriptions, you can see that John Doe subscription was canceled on this date here. Awesome. Now let's go back to the customer portal page again. And remember the return URL property we configure, it is for this link here, return to manfra.io. And as you can see here on the bottom, it will redirect the customer to the home route just like we configured. So if we click, it goes back to the home route. Great, so we just learned how to create a portal for the customers to view and make changes to their subscription. But remember that you'll need to handle some sort of authentication for the customer to make sure that they are redirected to their own portal. One last thing we can do on our project is listen for Stripe events. For example, when a new customer subscribes, when a new payment was made, when a subscription was canceled, when a payment failed. So Stripe sends events for almost everything that happens inside the platform. These events are sent to a route that we can create inside our application. This functionality is called Webhooks. To enable Webhooks, we can click on the Developers option here on the dashboard and select the Webhooks tab. So if our application is running on a production server using a valid domain, we can click on Add an Endpoint. But since we're testing on a local environment, we can click on Test in a local environment. So to use Webhooks in our local machine, we need to install a tool called Stripe CLI. You can check the Stripe CLI docs by visiting docs.stripe.com/stripe-CLI. And there are different ways to install Stripe CLI depending on your operation system. If you're using Mac, you can use Homebrew by copying this command here and run on the terminal, or download the tar.gz file from GitHub. There are also an option for Linux and for Windows as well. Since I already have the Stripe CLI installed, we need to log in using the terminal. So back on VS Code, I'll open the terminal. And here on the top right, I'll add another terminal tab. And the command to log in into Stripe CLI is stripe login, press enter. And it will show this message here to press enter again to complete the authentication process in the browser. This will open the browser. And we just need to allow the access so we can use Stripe CLI on the terminal using our account. We can click on allow access. Okay, access granted. We can close this tab here. And also the Stripe CLI docs tab. And back on the terminal, we can see that the authentication is complete and we can start using Stripe CLI to listen for the Stripe event. So Stripe will send the event to a route that we can configure. So let's create this new route below the customer's route. So app dot, and this is a post route because Stripe will send data to this route. And we can call this route whatever we want, but I will call slash webhook. And according to the webhooks example here on the dashboard, we need to configure an express middleware to receive raw JSON data. So I'll just copy this express.raw middleware here. We can copy the entire route from the example here. So let me select everything, copy, and replace this webhook route that we created. Okay, let me just close the terminal and the explorer here. Okay, so let's understand what's going on inside this route. Up here, Stripe will send on the request headers a signature that we need to pass along with the webhook secret key inside a construct event method to receive the events. So this webhook secret key, we can get it from the example, which is this endpoint secret constant. So let me copy the content here and let's store inside the .m file as well. So I'll create a new environment variable below the Stripe key called stripe underscore webhook underscore secret underscore key equals to the key we just copied. Okay, back on the webhook route, let me replace this endpoint secret variable here to process.env and the environment variable we just created. So stripe underscore webhook underscore secret underscore key. Okay, let me also replace the request and response parameters here to make all the routes standard. And the request here for the Stripe signature. And on the construct event method, I'll replace this request.body. Let me format here a little. And inside the catch here, we can add the return statement directly in front of the response. All right. Let me just format. So everything is okay. We're going to receive the event and store inside this event variable here. If something goes wrong, it will fall inside this catch block, returning an error with the status 400. Down here we have a switch statement checking the event type. You can find the complete list of event types that Stripe will notify our application by visiting docs.stripe.com/API/events/types. As you can see, the list is quite large, but inside the webhook route, let's add only the events that we might use in case of a subscription workflow. So for example, in case a customer starts a new subscription, we receive an event type called, let me replace here with checkout.session.completed. Let me add a comment here. So event when the subscription started. So inside this condition, let me just get rid of everything here except the break statement. And let's print on the console something like new subscription started. And let's also print on the console the data that Stripe is sending. So console.log, the event variable .data. So the event.type is the name of the event, and the event.data is the complete object containing information about the event. Let me delete this comment here. And let's add another case clause. And this time we'll listen for the invoice.paid event type. So this event is triggered whenever we receive a success payment every month or every interval we configured. Let me add a comment here saying event when the payment is successful. And I'll add a note here informing that every subscription interval. So this first event here will trigger when the subscription is started, and this one might be triggered at the same time if we didn't add any free trials. So let's console.log something like invoice paid, and the data as well, so console.log event.data, and then the break statement. Okay, let's add another case clause. And now we're going to listen to whenever a payment failed. So invoice.payment underscore failed. And let me add a comment here. So event when the payment failed due to card problems or insufficient funds. And I'll put in parentheses here every subscription interval. Okay, and inside let's add a console.log saying something like invoice payment failed. And let's add a console.log for the event.data and the break statement as well. Let's just add one last case clause here to listen whenever a subscription is canceled or renewed. So the name of this event is customer.subscription.updated. Let me add a comment here on the top. Event when subscription is updated. And inside, let's add a console.log something like subscription updated, and another console.log for the event.data and the break statement. Awesome. Now inside the default clause here, we can leave this console.log because it's going to show all the events that Stripe are sending but we're not handling. And here on the end, let me remove this comment from here. We're just returning an empty success response. Let me replace here the response. Okay. Now let's run a few tests here to check if these events are working. For that, we need to start Stripe CLI. So let me open the terminal. And we have already logged in into Stripe CLI. Now to start listen for the events, the command is stripe listen --forward -to and the route that we are handling these events, which is the route we just created. So localhost port 3000 /webhook. Hit enter. So Stripe CLI is ready. And if we check here on the dashboard, you can see that these two steps are completed, the login and forwarding the events to our route. So let's start by creating a new subscription here on our home route. Let me just remove this /success here. And I'll click on the starter plan subscribe link. And I'll just quick enter some details here using my name, for example. Okay, click on subscribe. Okay, all good. Let's check the events on the terminal. Alright, so all these events are being triggered, all with the status code 200, okay? Now let's check on the console by opening the other tab. Here we're printing all the events that we're not handling. Let me scroll all the way to the top. And as you can see, there are lots of events that we're not handling and we're just showing a message on the console. And here on the subscription update event that we're handling, which is the customer.subscription_updated event type. And we're also printing all the data that Stripe is sending as well. and then the invoice paid, which is this invoice.paid event type with the invoice data object details. And if we scroll down, we're also handling this new subscription started, which is the checkout.session.completed event, and the entire object data as well. Great, and all this object string here on the console is from inside the success route, because we're printing on the console the session details. Let me just remove this console log from here and comment the session constant. Okay, let me just close the terminal here. So here on the webhook post route, we could add some functionality here inside this switch statement. Maybe add data to our database, send emails to the customers, so we can do anything we want. Now let's test if a payment has failed. Back on the browser, let me remove this parameter here and open the home route. Okay, so I'll subscribe to the starter plan again. Okay, but this time I'll simulate a card that had been declined. So let me enter the email here, for example, mail@domain.com. And for the card number, we can use 4000 followed by 8 zeros, and on the end 9995. This will simulate an insufficient funds error. We can add any date here, and for the CVC as well. The cardholder name, I'll just put testing. I'll leave as Brazil and click on subscribe. Okay, as you can see, we got an error saying card was declined because of insufficient funds. Now back on VS Code, let's check the events on the terminal. Let me scroll to the top. So these are all the unhandled events. And here's the invoice payment failed that we are handling, which is the invoice.payment_failed event. And we're also printing on the logs the complete data object. That way we can inform the customer what's going on by email, for example. Awesome. Let's test one last event, which is when a customer cancels a subscription. So back on the Stripe dashboard, let's open the customer option. And I'll open my user here and copy the customer ID so we can check on the customer portal that we created. So I'll open a new tab here. Actually, let me open the tab we were using before for the home route. Okay, and I'll add a /customers / and paste the ID here. Okay, let's click on cancel plan. All right, cancel plan again. Okay, no thanks. Great. Now let's check the terminal. Let me just expand this and scroll to the top. And you can see that this subscription updated event was triggered. And inside the object data on the cancellation details property, there is a reason property informing the cancellation was requested. Okay, now let's renew the subscription to see what happens. So back on the customer portal. I'll just click on renew plan here and renew plan again. Okay, now back on the terminal. Let me scroll up and you can see that the same event was triggered, but the reason property here is null, so that means this was no cancellation. Great. Feel free to explore other events by adding them to the webhook route, like when a new customer was added, or a customer changed the payment details, or a new product was added inside the products catalog. Awesome! So we saw in this video how to create Stripe subscriptions using the built-in checkout session page. Also how to enable a portal for the customers so they can view and update details about their subscriptions, and how webhooks and Stripe events works on a local environment. I'll leave the GitHub link for this complete project on the description below. Hope this video was helpful to you, and if it was, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel so we can continue making more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you on the next video.